seekers of truth, let me introduce to you two different and interesting creatures, namely the Ligers and the Nephilim. They look interesting, right? But what are they? What they may have in common? And most importantly, what could have made them that gigantic? In this episode, Dr. Amr Saeb will try to discuss, elaborate, and shed some light to these questions, both scientifically and historically. See you after that.
Hello. To make our life easier, I will start with the Ligers. The Ligers are the largest cats on the face of the earth. They are the hybrid offspring of a male lion and a female tiger. Both parents belong to the same genus Panthera, but two different species. Notably, Ligers typically grow larger than either parental species. So why Ligers grow larger than both parents? The answer is because of the nature of this hybridization. In this case, we are making a mating between totally distinctive lineages that they have been separated for millions of years. Though they are close enough to produce a life and sometimes fertile progeny. Also, it has to do with what we call it genomic imprinting. To understand more about this process, let us watch this video. The story starts with your DNA, what we also call it deoxyribonucleic acid. It is the blueprint of your body. It tells how to function. Also, it determines if you will be a boy or a girl, and also if you're gonna have brown hair or black hair. Your DNA contains genes that carry the information for specific traits or features and functions within your body, such as hair color that is passed to you from your parents. DNA is a very small molecule that exists inside the cells of your body. It's packed in structures that is called chromosomes. Each consists of 2 chromatids, and humans have 46 of these chromosomes that is paired in 23 pairs. You receive one set of these chromosomes from your mother, and the other set you receive from your father. Genes control traits by expressing themselves in the cell and telling the cells what proteins to make and how much of these can produce. So genes basically are the blueprints, while the cells are the factories. But genes also work like a fan or a light bulb. When we don't need them, they can be switched off, and when we need them, they can be switched on again. For example, after you are done growing, genes that control growth are switched off because we don't need them anymore. And there are many mechanisms that a gene can be switched off or on. And in some cases, genes can be switched off temporarily. And in other cases, genes can be turned off permanently. So, what is genomic imprinting? All of us are born with genes that already turn it on or off depending on the parents we inherited these genes from. This phenomena called genomic imprinting or silencing. Remember, we carry two copies from each gene, one from the mother and the other is from the father. Genomic imprinting is simply when one copy of the gene from one parent is turned off, while the other copy from the other parent is turned on. Thus, in case of maternally expressed genes, MEGs, we call it paternally imprinted genes. And in case of paternally expressed genes, we call it maternally imprinted genes. Genomic imprinting occurs through both histone acetylation and DNA methylation. And methylation is basically adding the methyl group to the nucleotides of the DNA. However, genetic imprinting does not change the DNA sequence, but rather change the DNA expression. So, to sum up what we have said, genomic imprinting is an epigenetic phenomenon that causes genes to be expressed in a parent-specific manner. The majority of imprinted genes in mammals have been found to have role in the control of embryonic growth and development, including the development of the placenta. Other imprinted genes are involved in postnatal development with a role affecting suckling and metabolism. Moving back to ligers. Lions and tigers do not normally mate in nature, but they can easily get along in the captivity. As we said before, a male lion and a female tiger produce a liger, the biggest cat ever, but a male tiger and a female lion produce a tigon, an average size cat. Thus, the difference in the size in the hybrid offspring may depend on the parents' differentially imprinted genes. It is very important to mention that imprinted genes are under greater selective pressure than normal genes, and historically, imprinting generally emerged due to the competition between the interests of males and females within a given species because of the complex social structure. What is good for the father may not be good for the mother. Socially, lions and tigers are different. Lions live in prides, while tigers live a solitary life. Thus, a lioness may mate with several males. So any given male has genes that encourage growth in his own cup in order to maximize his gene dispersal and overcompete other genes. On the other hand, a lioness genes tend to fight against this, since all cups are favored equally by the mother. Thus, it tends to distribute the resources amongst all cups equally to maximize the survival rate. Tigers do not have to follow such dynamics, since there is no competition whatsoever. Thus, a female tiger does not need to evolve an anti-growth imprinting defenses. So you have a male lion with genes that enhance competition for resources and high growth rates, and a tigress that does not limit the growth of her own cubs, and voila, you have a liger that grows asymmetrically beyond the evolutionary endpoints of the two parental taxa. Moving to the tricky part of this video. But before I will start, I want to thank the doubters non-believers, and those who reject supernatural views to leave now. The coming section is not for you. For the open-minded and truth searchers and seekers, I will say, see you after that. So what are the Nephilims? To settle this issue very early, in my own opinion, and after examining all available point of views, I will say that the Nephilims are a divine hybrid offsprings. They are the offsprings of the sons of God and the daughters of men before the great flood of Noah. The Nephilims, or the giants, have been mentioned in several sources such as the Hebrew Bible, the ancient biblical virgins, the ancient Jewish religious texts such as the Book of Enoch, vaguely in the Muslims' Quran, Arabian paganism stories, and many other cultures. The following are examples of the Nephilim's mentions in some of these sources.
When people began to multiply in the face of the ground, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that they were fair, and they took wives for themselves of all that they chose. Then the Lord said, My spirit shall not abide in mortals forever, for they are flesh. Their days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went into the daughters of humans who bore children to them. These were the heroes that were of old, warriors of renown. Genesis chapter 6 verses 1 to 4. The Lord said to Moses, Send men to spy out the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the Israelites. So they went up and spied out the land. And they told him, Yet the people who live in the land are strong, and the towns are fortified and very large. And besides, we saw the descendants of Enoch there. So they brought to the Israelites an unfavorable report of the land that they had spied out, saying, The land that we have gone through as spies is a land that devours its inhabitant, and all the people that we saw in it are of great size. There we saw the Nephilim, and to ourselves we seemed like grasshoppers, and so we seemed to them. Numbers chapter 13. And they all answered him and said, Let us all swear an oath and bind one another with curses, so not to alter this plan, but to carry out this plan effectively. Then they all swore together and all bound one another with curses to it. And they were in all 200, and they came down on Ardis, which is the summit of Mount Hermon. And they called the mountain Hermon because on it they swore and bound one another with curses. And these are the names of their leaders: Semiyaza, who was their leader, Urakiba, Ramiel, Kokabiel, Tamiel, Ramiel, Daniel, Ezekiel, Barakiel, Asiel, Armarus, Ananel, Zakiel, Samsiel, Satiel, Turiel, Yomiel, and Araziel. These are the leaders of the 200 angels and of all the others with them. And it came to pass, when the sons of men had increased, that in those days there were born to them fair and beautiful daughters. And the angels, the sons of heaven, saw them and desired them. And they said to one another, Come, Let us choose from ourselves wives from the children of men, and let us beget for ourselves children. And Semyaza, who was their leader, said to them, I fear that you may not wish this deed to be done, and that I alone will pay for this great sin. Enoch chapter 6 verses 4 to 6. There we saw the giants. The descendants of Enoch come from the giants. And we were like grasshoppers in our own sight, and so we were in their sight. Baruch chapter 3 verses 24 to 28. O Israel, how great is the house of God! How vast the territory that He possesses! It is great and has no bounds. It is high and immeasurable. The giants were born there, who were famous of old, great in stature, expert in war. God did not choose them or give them the way to knowledge, so they perished because they had no wisdom. They perished through their fall. A champion named Goliath was from Gath, came out of the Philistine camp. His height was 6 cubits and a span. He had a bronze helmet on his head and wore a coat of scale armor of bronze weighing 5,000 shekels. On his legs he wore bronze greaves, and a bronze javelin was slung on his back. His spear shaft was like a weaver's rod, and its iron point weighed 600 shekels. His shield bearer went ahead of him.
And as I stated before, the sons of God in Genesis chapter 6 verses 1 to 4 has been explained as the fallen angels in some traditional Jewish books. However, another explanation was that the sons of God are the offsprings of Seth. And Seth was the third son of Adam and Eve, and the brother of Cain and Abel. And according to the Bible, he was born after the murder of Abel, and Eve believed that God had appointed him as a replacement of Abel. I found that the supernatural explanation of the nature of Nephilims is much more convincing compared with the traditional ones. Etymologically, the word Nephilim with a little yod in the middle of it, as in Numbers 13:33, is coming from the Aramic root Nephil, and it has a little yod in the middle of it. The Aramic word Nephil means giant. Here we should remember Numbers 13:33 that says, "And there we saw the Nephilims, the sons of Anak, who came from the Nephilim. And we were in our sights as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sights." Thus, the gigantism of the Nephilims goes much better with their nature as sons of divine beings. One more support for the divine nature of Nephilims come from the New Testament, such as Jude 6 and 7 and 2 Peter 2 and 4. Both passages refers to some rebellious angels that kept in dark and gloomy places, referred to as Tartarus, in chains till the judgment day because of their immoral sexual sense or behavior. And the term Tartarus is used in the Greek mythology to refer to the lowest part in the underworld, where the titans, giants here, were kept in for their rebellion against the gods. Thus, clear and logical connection was suggested between these several sources, namely the New Testament, Watcher traditions, ancient Jewish texts and authors. From all these, we can draw a connection between the previously named sources and the sins committed by the sons of God and women in Genesis 6:1-4. Then the Lord said, "My spirit shall not abide in mortals forever, for they are flesh. Their days shall be 120 years." Furthermore, several sources such as the book of Enoch and Daniel 4:13, Daniel 4:17, and even some scientific studies focusing on the Mesopotamian mythology such as Anas, Amar, Paper, the origins of Watcher, refers to the Watchers or the Kadishin, one of the most common titles of the sons of God. These sources suggested also that the Watchers or Kadishin are the fathers of the giants. Thus, the supernatural interpretation of the Nephilim is supported by 1. The offspring Gigantism, 2. The New Testament authors such as Jude and Peter, 3. The origins of Watchers that have been suggested in several ancient sources. Now, let us summarize what we have said about the Nephilims, and we will get that straight from the Bible. The Nephilims were giants, the violent superhuman offsprings produced when a wicked angels mated with human women in the days of Noah. The Bible says that the sons of the true God began to notice that the daughters of men were beautiful, Genesis 6:2. Those sons of God were actually spirit creatures who rebelled against God when they forsook their own proper dwelling place in heaven, materialized in human bodies, and begin taking as wives all whom they choose. Jude 6, Genesis 6:2. The hybrid born from this unnatural union were no ordinary children. Genesis 6:4. The Nephilim were giant bullies, tyrants, who filled the world with violence. And the Bible described them as the mighty ones of the old times, the men of fame. And they left behind a legacy of violence and fear. Let us address some misconceptions about the Nephilims. The first, the Nephilims are still alive on earth today. In fact, is God caused a global flood to destroy that violent ancient world. The Nephilim were wiped out along with all wicked people. In contrast, Noah and his family found favor with God and were the only ones preserved alive at this time. Genesis 6:9, 7, 12, 13, 23, 2, 2 Peter 2:5. Second misconception, the Nephilims were fathered by humans. In fact, their fathers are called sons of God. Genesis 6:2. The Bible uses this expression to describe angels. Job 1:6, 2:1, 38:7. Angels had the power to materialize in human form. Genesis 19:1-5, Joshua 5:13-15. The Apostle Peter spoke of the spirit in prison who had formerly been disobedient when God was patiently waiting in Noah's day. 1 Peter 3:19-20 refer to the same circumstances. The Bible writer Jude explained that some angels did not keep their original positions but forsook their own proper dwelling place. Jude 6. Conception 3. The Nephilims were fallen angels. In fact, the context of Genesis 6:4 indicated that the Nephilims were not angels but hybrid offspring born from sexual relations between materialized angels and women. After the angels began taking as wives all whom they chose, God said in 120 years He would take action against the ungodly world of that time. Genesis 6:1-3. The account adds that in those days the materialized angels continued to have relations with the daughter of men, and that they produced the mighty ones of all times, the Nephilim. Genesis 6. So the Bible has labeled the Nephilims and their ancestors by being wicked due to their wicked actions and disobedient to God and their violent behavior. So what about Ligers, the first hybrid we investigated in this video? Are they wicked too? And the answer is yes, they are. These unnatural animals, frankencats, often suffered from debilitating health problems, develop diseases and sustain injuries more often than other big cats, and die prematurely. Frequently have to be delivered by cesarean sections because they are predisposed to gigantism and often do not survive. Like all big cats hybrids, they are frequently suffer from neurological defects, sterility, cancers, arthritis, organ failure, and diminished life expectancy. PETA and many other animal advocacy organizations and big cat rescue groups are determined to stop the production of these frankencats. It is the time that these inhumane practices to be stopped. You can help by refusing to support displaying these poor animals and all captivated creatures, and by limiting or even cutting any funding allocated for such entities, and by refraining from attending such exhibitions, and most importantly, by allowing God's will on earth to keep lineages as pure as they were meant to be. Thank you.